evening and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Wildcard Devy Show. My name is Jack. You can catch me at JackCDCTT on X, and I am joined by the workhorse of this duo, Phil. How you doing at Posh Plays FF? How are you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm all good. Thank you. It is such a busy time. School holidays are finally here, and then I remembered that I trade off the kind of 30 kids I teach at a time for my two own children for 6 weeks. So it's not actually a rest, but it's cool just like not having to worry about getting up every morning, and except they're waking me up anyway, and rushing off into work. It gives me time to focus on fantasy football, family and fantasy football. Like, what a better combination could there be?
The things that we live and build our lives upon, eh?
That's it. How are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm good. I've started a new job, so my brain is fried with information overload, and that is why I described you as our workhorse back, and I'm that little Naheem Hines just coming in for those third down, passing down work. Speaking of which, he's back in the NFL, which is exciting. But yeah, so content-wise, I have been on the back burner, and contribution to this podcast, I've been very much relying on your ground and pound, but I'm doing well. I'm settling in, and it's also draft season, so it's fairly nice to be there. Before we do dive into draft season, we just want to again highlight our episode from 2 weeks ago. Our most recent Wildcard Devy show was arguably our best ever because we did very little of the talking, and so we had Oggy on from the Baltimore Ravens fan group, but also an NFL draft analyst. So if you have not checked that out, please do. We really learned so much from him, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so enlightening. It's one of those pods where, like, even I've gone back and I've listened to chunks and snippets, like, kind of over and over to kind of there was so much information shared. I guarantee, and I said it at the time, but I'll say it again, I guarantee that no matter how experienced you are as a Devy player, as a fantasy football player, there was stuff in there that will improve your process in terms of identifying talent and making sure that the right players end up on your roster. It was superb. So shout out to Oggy. And yeah, like I say, it was great. Hopefully, I think we'll definitely, without a doubt, inviting him back in the future.
Yes, we might have to just beg and plead that he would join us again, depending on how badly we presented ourselves.
So anyway, you're right. It is draft season, and there's fantasy football drafts flying all over the place. How are you getting on with them?
Yeah, I am the early days into the 5-Yard Rush FFCC, which is one of my favorite charity tournaments, one that I've done since year one, and lots of twists and turns in that. So for any of our listeners who are involved in that, you'll know that the kicker scoring is pretty wild compared to your normal fantasy league, and there's a minimum starting 2 kickers in there, so it's really boosting the draft ADP of kickers, and I'm sure Sleeper will be super confused as to why there are kickers going in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round all of a sudden. But it's going well, and it's good fun. I've managed to grab. I actually started. I've pivoted. I've gone 3 quarterbacks and a running back to start my draft, because quarterbacks and kickers are obviously important, and scoring this year is also leaning itself towards running backs over, or at least workhorse running backs over workhorse wide receivers, I would argue. And so I've ended up with Alvin Kamara as my running back 1, because who knows what, you can't really rely on anything apart from Alvin Kamara in that Saints offense. And I've snapped up Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud, and Baker Mayfield. So I'm feeling pretty happy with that start, even if it is a bit of a zag to everybody else going 1 quarterback, 1 running back, and 1 wide receiver. So yeah, at least in my division.
I like that. No, to be fair, I'm playing in the same tournament. I am picking from the 1-1. So I'm drafting in 4 charity tournaments at the moment. But if we start with the FFCC, I'm drafting from the 1-1, which nobody really likes. But then with the third round reversal, I thought it was really, really important. I actually double dipped on quarterback first. So I've got Lamar and I've got Baker. I have backed that up with 2 wide receivers. I took Njigba and Garrett Wilson. Much to my dismay, I took Joe Mixon as my workhorse back, and then the news drops today that he's going to be on the pup to start the season. And I have just added Mark Andrews to go alongside Lamar Jackson because as long as he's there, he's going to play nicely and score well together. So yeah, there's that one. Obviously, there's the JTT as well. I hate my team in that, so I don't want to talk about that. I've tweeted that a couple of times today. And then I'm in the final round of my Scott Fishbowl draft as well. So we've got I picked from the 12 slot in that, so I'm just waiting on the ultimate final pick of the draft. The scoring in that one again is crazy, and I love the fact that it's. I like the term roster fluid. Everybody is a flex or super flex spot. So if you wanted to fill it with tight ends, then be my guest. I've chosen to go running back heavy, which I think was quite common across the board. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I've swung for the fences with this one. Like my team could easily either be a top contender in the entire tournament, or every single one of them could be on IR by week 3. I kind of figured if you're going to be in a tournament that size, don't aim for the middle. Go down in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, fair enough. And no one will be focusing on you going down in a blaze of glory. You'll be the only one who knows.
Exactly.
And we'll know just by the absence of you talking about it, because obviously this is I believe your first Scott Fishbowl appearance, which means it's the first for the podcast, as I have not played in it either. So we will keep track on how Phil is doing in such a prestigious tournament, which lots of guys, even though we're Devy focused, it's an important competition and a really good, it's like the one that started these charity tournaments and showed us what a great community the fantasy football community can be, and what an impact they can make and we can make on the lives of those who really need it. So if you haven't checked them out, check out the website. If you don't know Scott Fishbowl, check them out, because they raise a ton of money for children's charities to give gifts and presents and toys and games and all kinds of things for children in need. So check that out, and check out JTT. I mean, obviously the FFCC, the JTT Cup, shut for this year, shut for applications, but they will all be opening and promoting their sign-ups for 2026 pretty soon, because you want to ride that wave and get people signed up early. So consider checking them out. We'll try and retweet all of them on X as well. So if you're not sure where to find them, come to us or send us a message on X.
Brilliant. I suppose there's one that we really should talk about, because it's much more up our street in terms of Devy, C2C, and then college fantasy football. There's the Tadpole Bowl. The baby brother, if you like, of the Scott Fishbowl. It is their inaugural college-only fantasy football tournament. How's your draft going, man?
Yeah, good. It's Power 4 only, which is throwing me from a college fantasy football perspective, because obviously with group of 5 schools, you get lots of teams that have a star running back or a superstar dual threat quarterback who is, top 3 at the position every year. So it's making me think a little bit harder, but is probably a good thing for our Devy minds, because most of our Devy stars are going to come from Power 4 conferences. Yeah, so it's been fun. My draft's going slower than your draft, I think, but I'm very happy with the value that has been dropping. And obviously, this is the first time this tournament's happened, so we talk about value, but actually that's only you've got to go off your own ideas and your own projections and your own rankings, because nothing really exists. Yeah. So and I'm definitely enjoying it. It's good fun to be chatting with some of the guys, all of the other guys in my division are in the States, and so I have been chatting with them, which has been nice, but also putting myself on auto draft overnight every night to make sure I don't hold them up and be the European that they cannot stand. So
listen, I agree with you completely. I went with the track that, so there's some interesting wrinkles. It is start 2 quarterbacks. So I made sure that, kind of contrary to what a lot of people were doing, I made sure I got 2 of what you would consider the top tier guys. And then built my roster around that, because they're also going to score most highly. I tried to keep it Devy relevant for as long as I could, because ultimately the proof is in the pudding with these guys in terms of skill. So it was finding the right balance between the Devy names and the ones that were going to contribute significantly to the offense they're on. So I've perhaps steered away from some of the biggest schools where everyone was clamoring for their star in the first round, and I've attacked the kind of tier 2, tier 3 Devy players that are very productive college players, but maybe that transition to the NFL is a little bit more unclear. So guys like your James Peoples, Denzel Boston's, should put up good collegiate seasons, but maybe there's still some questions about their Devy projection to the NFL long term. But either way, I'm absolutely delighted with how it's gone. I am 1 pick away from being on the clock in the final round. There is a distinct possibility that we can talk through my final pick live at some point in the show.
Great. That would be really fun. We've not done the big college catch up because there's not loads going on in the world of college football right now, or at least nothing concrete. There's a lot of rumors, and we'll get onto those in a second. But one piece of news is that, unfortunately, the tight end transfer Luke Haas, who has gone to Ole Miss, has gone down with a season-ending injury, and that news came out on Wednesday, the 23rd of July. So unfortunately, his season looks to be over. A tight end that is on that fringe of Devy interest, someone who has the size and the limited production profile, and we're all quite excited about how that could boom in the Ole Miss offense in Lane Kiffin's plans. Unfortunately, he has gone down to injury, but it does mean Daquan Wright is probably going to step in as the starter there, and that's exciting for him. Devy wise, I'm not sure. He's a senior. He's been around for quite a while, so you never know. We don't know with tight ends; they could bloom late. But the reason I mention this here is that news broke overnight, and actually I was able to snap him up late in this Tadpole Bowl draft. So I was happy is not the right word. Sad for Luke Haas.
Yeah.
Happy from fantasy point of
view. But then obviously there's always opportunity elsewhere, isn't there?
It
is interesting about Luke Haas, because I actually, in one of my deeper leagues where it's an annual 10-round draft, I took Luke Haas in the kind of later stages of the draft a year or so back, because he did flash as a freshman, as a pass catching. So he's an undersized tight end, but a good pass catching weapon. With good downfield speed for someone who plays in the tight end position. And then he spent the majority of last year banged up and didn't play. And so the transfer to Ole Miss was really timely as a way to kind of salvage his Devy stock, because he was a buzzy name. He was a name, we do talk about the tight end position being very difficult to project, but he was one that was garnering a lot of interest after that freshman season. So getting banged up and spending a year on the shelf, this really felt like a prove-it move for him to an offense that was supposed to showcase his skill set, and now he's going to miss basically a second full season. To me, that now is really his value's gone, and I hope to goodness, like a bit like the conversation we had about Evan Stewart a while ago. Now, listen, you won't have invested anywhere near the capital in Luke Haas that you will have done in Evan Stewart, but the message is the same. Like we want these guys to succeed. We want them to end up on the field. We want them to end up being successful. But as a Devy player right now, you're not going to sell him. You might not even have him. It would only be in the deepest leagues. I would imagine he's gone. But yeah, it looks like you're going to be stuck holding that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But again, for tight ends, I guess the difference for Luke Haas over Evan Stewart is that breakout age at tight end is totally is not well tracked. Let's put it that way. So he can come back next season and hopefully have that breakout. And 2 years on the shelf isn't the end of the world for a tight end, whereas maybe it probably is for a wide receiver. Different skill set, different. That lack of that losing a bit of pace as a wide receiver is pretty devastating. Whereas for a tight end, you can make up for it in different ways. So
absolutely,
we shall see.
Absolutely. So, Jack, you came to me with the idea for tonight's show because you've got a lot of thoughts buzzing around your mind when you're not navigating the new job. You wanted to talk navigating off-season Devy trading. So why don't you set the scene? Tell us some of the things that's been going on and some of the reasons that you feel this topic is pertinent for right now.
Yeah, so I was just thinking over like the cycle of trading in fantasy football, which other podcasts and other fantasy experts have kind of communicated in a really good way. So we're not going to try and gloss over or even touch on the cycles that regular fantasy picks take. You know what I talk about. The value of a rookie pick and the peaks and troughs in the season of when people are willing to trade veterans or rookies and that kind of thing. And there's a pretty general rule that in the off season people will be more attached to their rookie picks, so it's harder to get them, and you've got to pay more to claw them off somebody, and people will almost write off an aging running back, or even not necessarily an aging running back, but a year 4, year 5 running back will be you can't trade them away for toffee. So I was trying to think about the patterns that I've seen, and then get your thoughts on the patterns you've seen on how Devy trading works in a year's cycle, basically, and with a real focus on what happens in the off season, and then really how we can, what tips we can give our listeners, what tips we can give you guys to take advantage or to be wary of, as the off season is, for those of us who are deep in the Devy world, the off season doesn't really exist. Let's be honest. We're constantly looking to play that stocks and shares game and increase the value of our rosters and capitalize when players have, we hear national media heads talking somebody up. You're like, great, my league mates are going to see this. Let's see if we can sell them on. But the reality is that the off season really, really fluctuates on when you can get a trade done and when you can't, and that's what I wanted to dig into and therefore explore how we can use that to our advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really good talking point. I suppose, I mean, the first thing I would say is this, to me, is based around tiering your Devy assets and splitting them into values based on bandings and how you see them at the next level. Because what you want to try and ensure is you look, if you've got Jeremiah Smith, if you've got an Arch Manning, if you've got a DJ Lagway, these top names are Ryan Williams. They're the ones that you want to hold. Like, for me, there is absolutely no value in parting with those assets, no matter how desperate you might feel. And the only caveat to that is if you are literally on the cusp of winning, and it might get you an NFL piece that gets you over the line, because championships last forever. But that aside, when you're dealing with those tier 1 assets, they are going to be the cornerstone of your roster for years and years and years. They're safe projections, although there's always risk in every Devy projection. But they are the safest of projections and the most likely to translate. But in the tiers below that, so what we're talking about now is the tier of very good and good college players. There's value to be had at this time in the season, particularly for the guys in the next class. Projecting further out, 2027, I think, is going to be an awkward one because of how high everybody is in that class already. But for 2026, there is more talent there than people were first aware. And I think the general media and the general community are starting to wise up to some of these names. Now, what we're talking about there then is, and I'm going to use an example of a guy who I actually have got in a couple of C2Cs. In the C2C, I've got him in my CFF draft now because he is going to have a fantastic college season. I'm going to talk about Denzel Boston. Right? Denzel Boston, to me, is the exact type of guy now, as people begin to learn the names about potential NFL draft prospects for next year who are going to have a productive collegiate season. Now is the time for me where I'm saying, look, what does my roster look like? Okay, who are the wide receivers I have on my roster? How desperate am I for all these guys on my Devy roster to be on my own roster? But actually, which ones can I package and flip? People will be getting excited. Listen, Washington are going to go out early and blow the doors off the soft part of their schedule. Denzel Boston is going to be favored heavily as the go-to guy in that offense. He's going to put up big numbers. And I am not for a moment saying he's a bad player, but he is not in that secure elite tier of prospects for the next level. However, so for me, that then gives you the perfect opportunity to look at packaging this guy early, either in the off season. Now his name's generating buzz and people are beginning to know him a little bit more, or after he puts up big scores in those first few games, and flip him for, in a package deal for an NFL asset, or re-roll the dice and get yourself an extra first round Devy pick if you can. Because people are going to see a guy who's going to probably get day 2 draft capital in the NFL draft and thinking, hey, he'll be all right for my roster. When actually you can then re-roll on one of a potential tier 1, from the supplemental class coming in the following year.
Yeah, I like it. And what you say about having those players in a tier is really important. Look, not everyone's got the time to rank and tier their wide receiver prospects or running back prospects, and that's totally fine. But just having an idea of whether this player, so say Denzel Boston, does he fit into the same tier as players like Eugene Wilson or Nick Marsh or TJ Moore? Where does Boston fit within those guys? And can Boston's ceiling reach someone like TJ Moore's floor in terms of their NFL prospects? If you believe that Boston, his ceiling can be within TJ Moore's floor, that kind of range works well, then you could probably put them in the same tier. In which case, are you going to go out and it just gives you that flexibility to think, okay, if they're in the same tier, the off season is the perfect time for me to capitalize on that, where other people don't have those players in the same tier. Now, it's probably a bad example because I don't agree that Boston should be in the same tier as TJ Moore. But you see what I mean, though. If you've got a player that you are higher on than other people, can you go and trade down? Can you trade down and pick up some more capital? So I would say, Nick Marsh and Denzel Boston, I've got them in the same tier. I actually would much rather have Denzel Boston than Nick Marsh, but the consensus seems to be the other way around. So if I've got Nick Marsh, I am going to use the off season, especially because there's not really much buzz around Michigan State right now. I'm going to use the off season to tear down from Nick Marsh to get Denzel Boston and a little bit on top. Not a lot, not going to get loads on top, but I would rather have Denzel Boston than Nick Marsh at this point in the season. But then when the season comes around, like you say, Washington are going to have a nice soft start to their schedule. Boston's value is probably going to increase. Michigan State are not in such a privileged position to have a strong roster and to have a good schedule. So, you can even go back to that owner and flip him back again later in the year if their values have flipped again, and you've already made profit once and twice.
That's it.
Or you shop them elsewhere, which is more likely. I don't think the owner's going to buy them back. Although I've got a story for you later about exactly that happening.
Yeah, I think the key thing is having an idea of the ones that you don't want to sell and being prepared to move all of the others. Before the shine fades. And we've said for a long time that getting those, and if you can take a guy who's giving you wide receiver 2 production on the NFL side of the ball, and use one of these tier 2, tier 3 Devy guys that you identify as not been a long-term player for you, as trade bait, as a sweetener, to help you target those NFL guys. Remember, we're talking Devy at the moment. We're not talking C2C. It is only the NFL side that is going to win you points and win you games. So I would be looking, in any trade negotiations, if I'm not looking for more Devy capital to re-roll, if I'm looking for players to help me, win a Devy championship, I'm looking to use these mid-level prospects, the guys that I'm picking up in rounds 3, 4, and 5. No matter how much I like them, I'm looking to use those guys as trade bait, basically.
Yeah, and that dovetails perfectly into the next point that I wanted to make, which was around your draft. It's going to become apparent who the trade keen players are. There's going to be, in every league that I am part of, there's at least one person who goes all out for Devy players and Devy picks. And that is it's a really risky strategy, and that is fine. I'm on board with it if you're fully committed to the league and the league's going to last a long time. There are guys who are going to go in, and you can use their keenness to pick up those Devy assets and those Devy picks to your benefit, because those are the guys that you're going to try and upsell picks or those players that you are quite happy to let go, not because they're bad players, but because you don't see them as a long-term play on your NFL roster. It's the get to know your league mates rule, isn't it? Once you know the people that are keen to fill up their Devy roster, they're the ones to go and target, because you can get a fair trade. I'm not suggesting you go and rip them off by any sense of the imagination, but you probably have different values on those Devy players, and that's where you can get a deal done, and that's important, because it's not always easy to get a trade with Devy assets done.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a mindset thing, isn't it? Because I can completely put myself in the position of being on the other side of the fence, and let's take a 2027 guy like Nick Marsh, okay, someone that you're not actively that high on, but the community seems to be growing on, and taking a Nick Marsh and trading him away, and I understand the doubt and the lingering concern of what if I'm trading away the next big star. However, and I think that is the stumbling block that a lot of players are going to run into. But what if he's the next one? Well, if he was likely to really be the next one, in the vast majority of cases, we're already fairly aware of it. That's not to say that there aren't players who don't break those rules, like Puka Nacua say, who seem to sneak past everybody, but they are few and far between. There is not a plethora of guys who go unheralded and unheard of, who then go on to really break it big in the league. There will always be some who go on to, again, we'll talk about being very good. And sometimes, there are times where you will need to replenish a struggling roster with bodies, and actually taking a bunch of very good will just set you on your way. But in order to take the truest payoff, if you treat your Devy players outside of those top tier prospects like currency, it will yield more reward than hoping they all arrive on your roster and that they all turn into something with a modicum of decency.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my perfect example of that is someone who you hold on to and you're hoping will become something but doesn't. For me, that's Jaden Reed, a player who got higher draft capital than we all expected, and then suddenly more game time and has some absolutely blockbuster weeks, like wide receiver 1 weeks, but has never had the talent to be a long-term wide receiver 1. Now, my warning flag is again another Green Bay wide receiver, Matthew Golden. Now, the community seems to have been on the same page with this one, that everybody's fairly cautious around Matthew Golden. They're not really treating him like a first-round NFL wide receiver, even though he was drafted in the first round of the NFL draft this year. But it's players like that who, like you say, there are times where that is valuable, and in deeper leagues, that's incredibly valuable. If you've got six flex spots as well as 3 wide receivers, you're going to need players like Matthew Golden, and sure, that's the time to hold. But in most Devy leagues, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, they're the guys that you want to have. The ceiling for them is not what you can dream of. Do you know what I mean? Like we've always known that they're not going to be at the season's end a wide receiver 1 on your NFL fantasy roster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Green Bay fans. It's fine. It's fine for the football team. It's great. You'll have a much more productive and exciting offense. But for fantasy wise, it's not they're not the receivers I want. No,
totally. And again, it makes me think about like a recent draft that I've concluded. And you talk about knowing the guy in your league that's always going to be up for making more trades. I actually acquired a relative low cost extra Devy picks in this draft because I felt that there was value on the board. And the value on the board, again, doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to keep them all. Like, I've got quite a sizable Devy roster now. Just a quick count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 19 Devy players on my roster, which is too many. So the job for me now is to start to address over the course of this season who were the first draft eligible. So prioritizing the guys that are eligible in 2026 and thinking about which ones stand a realistic chance of contributing to my roster. And if they don't, I'm now actively going to try and look for deals and build deals that will include some of those players. And then, obviously, you get the guys in 2027. There's also, I will completely be honest, in a fashion that is very much not like me, that roster is fairly weak at running back. So I'm more likely to hold the running backs in the hope that some of them get a crack and look to move one of the wide receivers. But yeah, think about how you can turn that Devy roster into the highest points total possible over a 2 to 3 year period, right? So that's not just the guys that are going to be able to be traded away for NFL players right now, but think about the ones who are going to make the most meaningful contribution in translation to points, even in a year's time, 2 years' time. And if you don't see the points there, well, there might be points lying around on an NFL roster now that you're better off having.
Yeah. And the point of doing that, of us addressing that now, the off season is the time for you to map out, when are these guys likely to go to the league? Are they likely to be on my NFL roster? Well, if they are they going to contribute in a big way? Then you say, okay, if the answer is no, who out of this group is going to likely increase their value over the coming college season and who is not? Because that allows you to think about, okay, these are the guys that I want to try and trade before the season starts, because they might be in a timeshare as a running back in college and you don't see their value increasing from what it currently is. Or they are in a wide receiver room like Texas, where you're not sure how they're going to distribute those targets and whether anyone can really break out and solidify higher NFL draft capital. So that's why we talk about doing this now, because then you can start those trade conversations around the players that you are happy to get rid of and that you don't see having a value spike. So we're not talking about Denzel Boston here because we think his value is going to increase, because he is going to have a good start to the season and he's going to be the clear wide receiver one for DeMond Williams and that Washington Huskies offense.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, bear in mind as well, just a counterpoint to that sometimes the off-season's not the best time. So I'm going to give you a name now. Again, I was just looking at that list, and I'm looking at a guy who I actually think might be a better player to move 2-3 weeks into the season if he has a good start. So I currently hold Nick Anderson in that league. Nick Anderson is a wide receiver prospect who flashed massively as a freshman at Oklahoma, battled injuries last year and has moved to LSU. We expect LSU this coming season to have a high octane passing offense with, led by Garrett Nussmeier. And Nick Anderson is part of a very much kind of transfer heavy rebuild of that wide receiver room. And I just need to consider now, so, in terms of the NFL roster that I have, is Nick Anderson likely to contribute? And the answer for me is no, but he could have a highly productive season at LSU. Now, at the moment, he's a little bit out of sight, out of mind. Trying to package him and move him now is the kind of opposite of trying to do that with Denzel Boston, who's already garnering quite a lot of buzz and attention. Nick Anderson's hype will build in the early stages of the season if he starts well at LSU playing with Garrett Nussmeier. And so you kind of move from off-season Devy trading into in-season trading, but the value there 3-4 weeks into the season, I will start to know the holes on my NFL roster and where I can best strengthen that based on what's happening with a guy, but following the same mold of tiering my guys and thinking about who's likely to translate and who isn't. So Nick Anderson for me falls into the caveat of not right now, but still be considering the same play.
Yeah, I think we're in lockstep here. Like, firstly, in Nick Anderson and our thoughts on his future, but also I think that's kind of what I was saying as well. So Nick Anderson is the kind of guy whose value I think is going to increase as the season starts. Not all the way up until the end of the season. So he's someone, the stocks and shares idea. We sell him as soon as he gets his first spike, which would be 2-3 weeks into the season, like you say. So Nick Anderson is a great example of someone who you're not going to start those trade conversations now because you believe his value can get higher than what it currently is. Whereas there might be players on your roster who you don't see gaining value in the first few weeks of the season, and you don't see their value increasing towards the NFL draft, and therefore they're the players you want to get rid of now. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Any other thoughts or any other musings that brought this conversation to the fore? I mean, I think there's been some good advice given out, some good talking points, but
yeah, well, I'll quickly start on a few things. So timing of trading in Devy drafts, in Devy leagues, tends to, in the off season, revolve around when your Devy draft is, because it can be really, if you have an early Devy draft, which I'm all for, because I think that is, it relies more on your projection and your opinions on a player and what you've seen them do, rather than listening to the hype that's coming out of camp. So I'm all for it, but it does make the middle of the off season quite challenging to make a trade, because people become hold players. They will be enamored with the picks that they've made. They're hopeful for the players that they drafted that didn't break out last year, because if you look hard enough, you can find hype around every single player that doesn't get injured. Like if you really look hard enough, you can find one report of a guy that is hyping up the player that you picked 3 years ago that hasn't done anything. So it becomes difficult to get trades done a couple of weeks after your Devy draft. So try, and if you're looking to make moves, try and do that in advance of and during your Devy draft would be one of my tips. The other one is, like I just said, there is news coming out of every camp from all kinds of sources. It's important that you refine who you are listening to and who you are reading from, because you will see, okay, we've had big news this week that Dave Portnoy of Barstool fame is joining Fox's Big Noon Kickoff. Now, I'm not a fan of the guy in any way. I don't think he's going to bring good college analysis to that broadcast, but he's going to bring a lot of eyes and a lot of clicks, basically, to Fox. So I totally understand from a business model why they've done it. It will be entertaining for those that enjoy that kind of thing. I obviously do not, as he is a Michigan super fan, but also he's just not that nice a guy, in my opinion. Not trying to get this show in any kind of trouble. So it's important to think about your sources. Who do you trust? And for me, that is, beat writers who have been with a team for a long period of time. They have good relationships with the coaches or with some of the staff at the city. Obviously, coaches change, players change, but beat writers tend to stay the same, especially local ones who really care about their team. So make sure you're refining who you read stories from and which podcasts you listen to and what articles you're looking at. If you want to know a little bit more than that about who you can look into on different teams, there's a few good posts that I've bookmarked on X. So come and chat to us and we'll try and dig those out. Obviously, we are not on the ground in America based on every campus, so we have to outsource that, and we have to follow guys that are recommended by people that we trust. So there's a bit of a chain there, and you're not going to get it right every time. But if you listen to people like Dave Portnoy or Pat McAfee or Desmond Howard, you're not going to get an insightful view into what is going on at different schools. You're going to get headline making reviews. So make sure you are looking in the right places for your camp news over the off season. Yeah. That is my gold nugget piece of advice.
Flip side of that is, if you see these channels and personalities hyping someone that doesn't match your process, take advantage.
Yeah.
Take advantage. Absolutely. Play the game both ways.
Absolutely.
Excellent advice. Jack, I have got some kind of hot off the press news. If we can circle back round to our talk about draft season. I have just had a text message drop from a longtime friend of mine and former teammate, Greg, known lovingly in the community as Sunshine, who runs the Warrior Bowl competition. And he has sent me a message saying he has a place to play in a division with me, where I am currently the defending champion, available to give out via our podcast. So
how exciting.
I've given this absolutely no thought whatsoever, because it just dropped literally 5 minutes ago. But how do we feel about popping it? I'll pop a post on our X page, which you can find here at Wildcard Devy. If you quote tweet or quote post that post with the reason that you should follow our account, the reply that either we like the most or garners the most kind of traction in terms of clicks and likes and whatever else will be the one that we select. We'll identify that player to come and play along in the Warrior Bowl with me this year. How does that sound?
That sounds excellent. Thank you very much, Greg, for giving us that opportunity, and you know, another great organized event that we can promote. Maybe we'll do a bit more on that in a future episode. We'll spotlight the Warrior Bowl, because not just because we've got this place to give away, but because it is a great competition to be a part of. So.
Absolutely. So there's over 600 teams that play in that now, year in, year out, from all around the world. I'm absolutely delighted to have been in there since its inception. Like I said, Greg is a former teammate of mine from when we played at Sheffield Hallam back in the mid-2000s. He's a great guy who runs a fantastic tournament with the help of his good friend Foley, our good friend Foley. So yeah, I would be delighted to have one of our listeners come along and join me in that division. On that note, it seems like a really good place to sign off for the evening. Jack, is there anything else you want to say?
No, I think we're all good. I'll save my back and forth draft story for our next episode, because it will be relevant for years and years to come, I'm sure.
Perfect. In that case, then, in the meantime, you can see right there, you can follow us on X at WildcardDevy if you don't already. You can also follow the entire Fantasy Wildcard family on X and YouTube, where there is fantastic content dropping on the regular, particularly as training camp kicks off. I know the Dynasty guys will have ears to the ground on what's happening for those Dynasty rosters of yours. We will keep pumping out all the Devy goodness for your ears and eyes. And yeah, until then, we'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon.